Hello, everyone. There we go. So I'm the community manager and editor of Developer Force, and that's developer.force.com. And developer.force.com is actually running all around you. So there's big screens at the top there, the Developer Force Twitter view, and also the e-signage apps that you see, which gives you some announcements and what the next sessions are. Those are all running on developer.force.com, and that's because, of course, we also put together the Force.com zone. And so I guess that's one of the first lessons is, we find it really easy to build on Force.com sites, and what we do is we create these small little sites all the time, and they all get added to our main site, which is of course, developer.force.com. The way we start developing is usually using a sort of an approach where we go to a graphic designer and say, this is the kind of thing we want, please help us. And they come up with some kind of design, and then we go and implement it. And what we've implemented so far, of course, is the homepage, the developer.force.com homepage. We've got a code share, which is some of you might know is where you can share code. The sites gallery that Bulent showed earlier is something I architected. We have lots of feeds. One of the things that I think are hidden from sites is it's not just sites. It allows you to create these feeds that people can subscribe to very, very easily. The Dreamforce page where we host all the sessions, a release page where we talk about all the releases of Force.com, technical library. We have a lot of stuff on developer.force.com. Of course, developer.force.com existed before sites came around, though, and I suppose that's an important aspect of this is, we've managed to have this amalgamation of technologies. We have a media wiki, which is this, the Wikipedia sort of technology running our technical library, and that's integrated with our Force.com site. And we have a couple of instances like that. So this is an example of a typical design-driven process where we go to the graphic designers and we say, this is the kind of information we want to present, please come back with something. And then what we do is we typically take that code, the HTML, and we have to work with people who are familiar with web design. I mean, one of the aspects of designing with sites is you have to think about developing on websites. And there are plenty of people out there who know how to develop websites. And that comes down to things like HTML and CSS and JavaScript and those kinds of things. To some extent, you need to know some of that kind of stuff. And I'll show you that in a little bit more detail in a moment. I think one of the primary lessons, though, is, what we did at Developer Force is go live. And we went live very, very early, before the technology was a GA.
Yeah, it was 3 months old.
3 months old technology. And we continue to do that. We continue to use all the new features that Bulent keeps pushing out. And partly because we are the developer site, and that's why I can wear jeans, for example.
And we sit at the same floor. They know where to find me.
But, we keep adding features. So, for example, we've just recently looked at localizing our website. So we added some Japanese support. It hasn't gone live yet. We wanted to enhance the search on developer.force.com. So we've got this new incremental drop-down search that we just added. And of course, as you can see on the right-hand side, we've got a number of applications in our org. So we have a typical org, and what we do is we built our main site, which is the developer.force.com homepage, and that's almost like a small content management system, because we need to manage the blogs that are posted there, the discussion boards that are posted there, the articles and the banners and the CTAs. And so we built this little CMS for ourselves, a content management system. And then we keep adding features. So just like the boards that you see behind you, we decided we're going to come here, let's do something on our site. Let's just put some of our information out there in public. So what I'm going to do is just quickly, before I go through these lessons, just show you some of the back end of what happens. So unfortunately, they don't build these things for tall people. So let's see if I can raise this. Right. So what you're seeing here is our developer.force.com website. What I'm going to do is quickly go through to the Force.com zone experience, which is the Dreamforce pages we put together. And what you'll see is, it's a typical website. It's public. It has some nice little features, scroll bars and drop-downs and some Ajax effects. But what's really nice about this particular feature, this particular site, is these lovely URLs. And if any of you are familiar with...
Can I take a break here?
Yeah.
Safe Harbor. This is one of the pilot functionality that we enable for developerforce.com. If you guys are interested in, you know my email as well. So hopefully this is going to be available in the next release.
Yeah.
What it's going to allow you is to create user-friendly URLs for your pages And any of these parameters on the page, directories on the page, could be a parameter you can pass to your page. It could be a language, or it could be a different directory. One of the most requested functionality on AppExchange as well. Sorry.
Right. No. So you're probably familiar with the identifiers on the top, and we have very pretty URLs that we're very proud of. Our homepage, for example, this is how I configure the homepage. And what I do, for example, if I want to update the blogs, is I simply go down to what we've created, this little content management system. We have buckets of information. And I say, well, I want to modify the contents of what's in that bucket. And when I hit this add items, it actually goes off to the blog, finds the latest blog posts, and let me add one. So I can go choose this one. I can add it to the bucket. And now what happens is, when I apply these changes and publish, they'll go live on our homepage. And so this is me updating my homepage through my CMS. And it's pretty simple, and that's it. You won't see it immediately, because that's one of the nice features of sites, which is caching. And I should speak about that in a moment. It's not quite there yet. So if I go back to my presentation, I'll quickly go through my best practices. Caching. So one of the things that Sites gives you is a global content delivery network. And so what this means is that my site, the developer2force.com website, is actually available and cached in locations all around the globe. And we currently have about a 30-minute cache period. And of course, different clients and different customers would change that caching. But what that means, of course, is that anybody who hits that web page, say in China, will hit the China cache for that web page, and they'll get it much more quickly, I should say. And we use caching quite a lot, and some of my colleagues will use it even more extensively.
Can I inject a couple of?
Of course.
So, the reason we enable this functionality, actually, a couple of reasons. The first, this is running on your force.com org, right? So a lot of other customers are using the same instance as a multi-tenant system. So we need to control how much resource you can consume the system. But at the same time, we want to give you the flexibility that you can serve your end users in a beautiful way. So what we did, we crafted this out-of-the-box integration with Content Delivery Network, namely Akamai, and no cost to you, very transparent. You don't have to do anything. It is automatically, and you have the full control what page needs to be cached for how long. It automatically gets cached all around the world on 50,000 servers. The benefit is, if it is cached, the end user gets from the closest location to their location, the page they're asking. If it is not cached, or you chose not to cache, then we leverage the IP traffic shaping. Then that location knows the fastest route to Salesforce instances, so it is way faster than system figuring out how to come to Salesforce.
Something else you might have noticed about all of the websites that you've seen is that none of them follow the traditional Salesforce UI. And of course, you have pixel level control. So what we have is, we have traditional web developers working with HTML and style sheets and all the rest. And that gives you fine control over what the look and feel of your website is going to be. Good web design is, of course, important. If you think back to all the websites from the 1980s and 1990s, there's some terrible websites out there and usability issues and all that kind of stuff. When you use the traditional Salesforce UI, you get a very strong UI. You get a UI that works very well for what it's designed for. When you design your own websites, you need to think about web design slightly more. We have a little team of developers, and I manage that team. And that team of developers actually picks up Force.com sites quite quickly. So we have a new developer coming in. Within a week or so, he's developing on our site. And that's due to the beauty of Apex and Visualforce, which are pretty easy to pick up. And those are the technologies behind Force.com sites. Change is easy. So, the applications that you're seeing around you, I've actually changed them 3 times today. We upped the font size, we changed the particular font, and we changed, we nabbed a little bug to do with timing. And we did that today, and nobody really noticed. And that's really nice. So I can just go into my website, change a few things, push them to production, and change is really, really easy. And that's something that's very useful when you are, of course, creating websites.
Maybe it's a best practice. Do you want to tell them what the bug was?
The bug was a nasty bug. The bug was to do with, we have many websites, and all these websites have anonymous users. So when you actually go to a website, we assign you this anonymous user profile. But it turns out these anonymous users also have a location profile, a time zone information. And so the time zone information we'd associated with the site wasn't the same time zone as we are in now. And so it was showing the wrong sessions at the wrong time. Yeah. Nasty.
And of course I said, oh, duh, of course, you need to change that. It's like, where is it documented?
I'll skip through to, security is critical. We think about security a lot, and if you go through the Force.com workbook, you'll find that as you build your website, Sites is very particular about what it shows. We don't want you to make the mistake of suddenly exposing all of your data. And what Force.com Sites does is it asks you, you have to actually tell it, I want you to allow somebody to view this object, or view records, or view these fields. And that's because they want you to explicitly enable that security. And I think that's a really good approach. And finally, I think one of the things we do a lot is, start small. We started with one web page, which is the main web page of developer.force.com. And over time, we just keep adding applications, keep adding pages, and keep adding functionality because change is easy. And I think that's one of the main lessons I would say is just go out there and start using it immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So I must say you're a great customer of mine. One of the reasons is that currently this technology is targeted to developers. And John is the developer force guy, so they don't have any problem. But the more I bring business users, we're going to start seeing some of the requirements are getting different, more declarative UI kind of things. So my next guest is Ryan Ellis. He is the product manager. He's the hero behind AppExchange.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Great. So I'm Ryan Ellis. I'm the product manager for the AppExchange. I work with the development and QA teams to build the AppExchange site, not the apps within it. So to start with, can I just get a raise of hands? How many of you have ever visited the AppExchange? That's awesome. That's totally great. I'm glad to see that. The AppExchange is a really wonderful place for our customers and our partners. The AppExchange has been around for many years. It includes both applications built by our partners as well as applications built by Salesforce.com itself. And recently we also added service listings so that our consulting partners can also have a presence and list their business consulting practices, their custom app development, or perhaps training services. And it's had wild adoption amongst our customers and really is one of the major selling points of Salesforce today. To talk about the AppExchange a little bit further, I'd like to mention the history of the AppExchange. So like Developer Force, the AppExchange has been around for a while. It was launched in 2005, well before the sites was even a glimmer in Boulen's eye. And so way back then, we had to build it a different way. And basically what we did was we built a Salesforce backend, which stored all of our data in really friendly custom objects and all of that. And that was great. But then we had no way to show it to the public. And that, of course, is a major requirement for any marketplace. And so what we did was we built a bunch of JSPs and connected it together with Java and used the Salesforce API to pull the data from Salesforce and to render it in pages that people could access. That worked okay. It was a little bit of clunkiness. The developers had to work on overtime in order to build a bunch of features that would have been available directly in the platform had we been able to take advantage of them. So that was too bad, but we cobbled it together and it worked. And once sites came into the picture, we had this whole new opportunity in front of us. And so we decided to take advantage of that time and completely rebuild the AppExchange from the ground up. And at that time, we also decided to completely make a new investment in the visual design and the interaction design of the site. And we pulled in an outside consulting firm called Hot Studio to help us do that. I know that John mentioned a little bit about how important design is. And definitely, when you build your business applications, design is important. But when you build a public website that people can browse for on Google and find, it really better be tight. So that's something you should think about. In any case, we were able to build a 100% native application on Salesforce, and that's what you see when you look at the AppExchange today. So I wanted to talk briefly about how we interact with sites. To start with, we use sites in both authenticated and unauthenticated modes. The unauthenticated public use of the site, of course, is if someone wanted to come to the AppExchange and browse for an application or service, they could just do so. They might Google for it. They might find an email marketing solution that looked interesting to them, link to that page, and do all the normal SEO type things that you would like to do on any sort of website. But we also have authenticated requirements. So we wanted to make sure, for example, that all of the reviews that are written on our site are actually written by our customers and are not perhaps partners attacking one another or someone who is writing many, many reviews on the same listing, basically fraudulently. We also, of course, wanted to make sure that our publishers could list on our site and do it in a self-service way so that it would be sustainable and we wouldn't have to create a huge team of people. And so for that reason, we use both authenticated and unauthenticated access. And we use the customer portal underneath to do that authentication. So you can see we have these two URLs. It was also important to us that our customers be able to self-register for the site. We have lots and lots of customers, and clearly we did not want to go through and vet everyone and give them access to the site. So instead, we utilized the self-registration features of Force.com sites and the customer portal in order so that every customer can come there and just log in and continue with their experience. Like John mentioned, feeds is a really interesting aspect of sites that sometimes doesn't get talked about as much, but we're using the Atom Feeds feature here so that people can subscribe to the newest applications or services and keep up to date with those in the way that they want. John mentioned caching, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about caching in a second, but for those of you who've never done it before, this is how easy caching is. It says Apex page, cache equals true, expires equals however many seconds you want it to be. And that's it. You're done. It's really awesome. It's a really great feature. So in any case, I'll talk more about that in a second. We use it quite a bit. Actually, sorry, I didn't want to go back yet. I also wanted to speak for a second about web analytics. Because these are public websites, you can integrate them with web analytics tools such as Google Analytics or Omniture or other ones. We do that. It's very important for you to constantly be optimizing your site, and this is the best way for you to get the feedback that you need in order to efficiently optimize it. So definitely go ahead and use that. There's even a feature in sites that allows you to just enter your ID in Google Analytics, and it will do the rest for you. So I wanted to talk a second about governor limits. And since this is a behind-the-scenes session, I wanted to talk about a few of the challenges that we had early on going live with sites. So as Bulent mentioned, when you're running a site, it's actually a shared service with everybody else who's running in the same multi-tenant kernel. And as a result, there are governor limits that basically hold you back from exposing the entire service to like a runaway, maybe a bot or something like that that might attack you. And so we have these three different governor limits. I won't go into them in great detail, but it's important to understand them and how you can work with them and how they help improve your site overall. In particular, the AppExchange uses a lot of what you can see there called request time. And request time is basically the interactions back and forth where the site is calling to Salesforce, getting data, and pulling it back and doing something with it. And so those instances represent hits against what we call the origin, against Salesforce itself, and not against our cache. So one thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that your request time stays relatively low. The reason for this, of course, is that A, your customers will have a better experience, because if you're using caching effectively, people all around the world will have a faster experience and more timely one for them. The other thing, of course, is that as it is a governor limit, it is a limit that you have for the day. So if you actually end up exceeding this limit, your site might actually be shut down for the day.
So, Ryan, what happened when we first went live with AppExchange?
So we weren't really sure how much traffic we were going to get the very first day we went live with AppExchange, and it turned out we got a lot. And so everything was going very swimmingly, and it was a beautiful day. And then at about 12:30 when I was at lunch,
my phone started ringing.
A whole bunch of people suddenly started calling me and saying, "Oh my God, the AppExchange is down." And needless to say, I freaked out. I ran out of lunch. I started calling Bulent immediately, and we discovered that we had gone over our request time limit because so many people were hitting the site that very first day. And we hadn't done like a big launch or anything like that, but word of mouth gets around and people come and see things. So in any case, Bulent helped me out of a pickle there, and we immediately that night actually changed a lot of our caching strategy in order to make certain pages much more effective and never went over the request time limit again.
I want to tie that with what John said. On John's slide, he mentioned use static resources. Static resources are the media repository for your Visual Force pages. You can zip them up, all style sheet, JavaScript, and you can reference from your Visual Force page to those resources, right? And we designed the site in a way that those resources are automatically cached for a day or until you update. Because you see the timestamp on those resources. When you update, a new timestamp is getting generated, so you don't have to worry about the cache picking up the latest one. However, what we realized with AppExchange design, since they wanted to provide CMS kind of functionality to their partners, they're uploading images as an attachment. Attachments are not going into static resources, and they're not cached. And if you look at the AppExchange homepage, there are about 85 of them showing up, and that means all of them are query and using request time, and the page is not cached at all. So we changed our product caching strategy as well. Now we're caching the attachments for 10 minutes. And Ryan decided that which page gets updated how often. Do we really need our homepage to be dynamic for everybody, or change like every 10 minutes, 15 minutes? You need to start thinking about those things when you have an application and exposing to the internet. Everybody can come to your site.
Exactly. And Bulent's team has also offered a couple of great tools to help you in your struggle of keeping inside of these governance limits, and those things are listed below here. So one is there's actually an app on the AppExchange called the Force.com Sites Reporting Package, and if you install that, it will give you a sites usage dashboard, which you see here on the right. And that's a really great tool to see how your site is doing over time, whether or not you're staying within those limits, if you're getting spikes because of certain announcements or whatever. So I would fully suggest that for any of you that are thinking about using a site, that you install that particular package. And also, there's a new feature which is in pilot, which Bulent might speak more about, but it basically allows you to create workflow rules that can warn you so that I don't have that panicked call while I was at lunch. Instead, I could get a less panicked email to my BlackBerry that might say, oh, you've hit 60% of your request time limit. You better go see what's going on. So we've utilized that, and perhaps a few of you will start using it as well. I wanted to talk just very briefly about some of the changes that we made to our homepage in particular, and with regard to caching. So if you take a look here at the left side, this is what our homepage looked like when we went live with the site on the first day. And it had a region on it called Your Saved Apps, which you'll see there, which was a really great tool, and it was something that, we wanted to, it's something that the interactive design firm came up with. And it allowed people to immediately get user-specific information on that homepage, right? They're going through, they're saving things, they see them here, they're doing a recently viewed list. It was right there together with it. And so that was a great interaction design that we wanted to have. But unfortunately, it didn't play very well with caching in the sense that if I cache this page, then that page is coming actually from Akamai's content delivery network, and so it's the same for everyone, which means you can't have user-specific data. So instead, what we ended up doing is we ended up moving to a model that you see here on the right, which was we removed that element from the page, we put other stuff there in its place, and we moved this concept of saved lists into its own separate page, and we don't cache that page, and people now access that through a link that you can see at the top. So when you're designing your website, you need to think about these sorts of aspects at the same time and make sure that if the page must have user-specific information on it, make sure it's not a page that everyone's going to hit, because you're going to run into the same problems that I did.
Yeah, so a couple of gaps coming out of this conversation, and they're on all our roadmaps. One is we need to start supporting cookies, so based on the cookie, that page can, even if it's cached, can render information dynamically. And the other one is partial page caching. Right now, either the whole page is cached or the whole page is not cached. We're working around on the topic that you can cache based on components. So you can use templates, you can use reusable components on the page. You should be able to decide which component is cached, which component is not cached.
So with that, I'm just going to very briefly talk about the thing that Bulent was just mentioning, which is about partial page refresh, and a decision that we made as well, also on the homepage. So here you're seeing the AppExchange homepage, and you'll notice that there in the center we have this most popular list, and it says paid apps, free apps, and services. Guess what everybody likes to click on the page? Free apps. Shocking, right? So we had a choice to make here. Do we want to do a sexy thing where when I click this thing, it does a partial page refresh and changes the center zone? Or Do I want to actually do a full page refresh, which seems unintuitive, which is going to be faster? What do you think? Well, we end up doing a full page refresh because that comes back from the Akamai cache and it's really fast. You know, that was like, I don't know, 0.4 seconds or something like that. If I ended up doing that partial page refresh and I happen to be living in Australia, which is far away from our lovely data center in San Jose, that might take a really long time. So we end up making decisions like that, and you'll probably end up having to make same sorts of decisions when you develop your product.
Thank you, Ryan.
Sure.
Obviously, we're doing other stuff as well. So what we're doing is, even there is this mass 50,000 server CDN in place, we're adding our own proxy service so we can also cache on our side, not necessarily you have to go to database each time. So my next guest is Ed Park. He's the product manager for partner site. So recently went live, and I hope some of you guys are using it and enjoying it.
All right.
Hello, Ed.
Hello. I'm just trying to get this to present. Do you know how I can do that?
It's all the way on the right side at the bottom.
Okay. Okay.
There you go.
So, hello everyone. My name is Ed Park. As Bluen mentioned, I am in the partner organization. And this summer, we kind of undertook a task to take a look at all of our web properties where we are hosting partner-centric information. This is not necessarily for developers, but for ISV partners, consulting partners. How many of you out here are actual partners of Salesforce? Great. And how many of you are developers? Developers and then customers? Okay. So what I want to take you through today is what our use case is from a business background of creating a new website, presenting that to our community, to our prospective partners, trying to really open up our funnel and really bring consistency and message around. What I actually want to focus on is a little different, not as much of the technology, but really the business process and the best practice of how we went about just attacking this problem. Our use case really was build a new marketing website around the partner community. We had 2 or 3 different places where we were showing this information. Salesforce.com, on developer.force.com, and other wiki pages. So it was really hard. What we were getting feedback about is that it was really hard to find consistent information. So if you want to reach out to your customers, a website obviously is a great way to do it. What we ended up doing when we started looking at the overall problem is the technology for us, there was no question. Not because we're Salesforce, but because Sites works. When we said, what technology do we want to use? Sites. We didn't have to think about it. And that's really, in terms of, we knew it worked. All I had to do was go ask Bulent to register a domain name. And I knew the technology would work. We worked with Brian around cache, and we knew what those problems were. So a lot of what we did in our business process was really around designing the site. And that's what I'd like to talk to you about. It took us about 1 month, end to end, to really get it up and running. And that is really, a small portion of it was the technology, and a big portion of it really was the building a content management system, but also the design. What I would impress on all of you, if you're starting to look at using sites as a solution, if you are not quite sure what your site is going to look like, if you are still trying to figure out your user interaction and your messaging and how to really build that user interaction to optimize, my first recommendation would be work with a design firm and really get them in early. You can do all the project planning you want. You can really do the coding. The coding for us did not take very long. It was really the back and forth on the visual design, the getting the executives and the management to buy in and to buy the messaging. And then the other thing is building the content management piece. What we wanted to do, Sites is great. It gives us that beautiful front end. We can use Visualforce. We can use the platform to build out our custom objects. But we actually had to build our own content management system to do things like approvals and content version control, and really make this process easy for marketing managers to update the data and these pages as they needed to. So best practice, I'm sure you guys have all seen these types of slides, but really, if you follow a methodology, gather your requirements, define your audience, define your user experience, that's your key, right? You can build any site you want, but you really want to nail down who your audience is going to be, what their message is going to be, how you want to get them into your funnel. Then pick up with your visual design. We actually worked with a firm called LaunchDM. They have worked a little bit with developer.force.com. They've worked on the salesforce.com new website as well. So we used the design firm to really help us walk through that interaction set. What they did for us is they built us a wireframe. So we didn't have to worry about the actual content and the colors yet. They built us on the left a wireframe that said, hey, you want to think about buckets. Where do you want to put your big banners, right? Everyone wants a banner, but sometimes banners can overtake the page. Where do you want to really put your feature and your content, your latest news, those sorts of things? And from that process, we transitioned into our comps, where, as John mentioned, then you get your developers involved to do your slicing and your dicing of all your HTML and your CSS files. Our big lesson learned is start simple. So when I talked about a CMS, our content management system, and I'll show you that in a second, we needed the data model and the objects to really support what we wanted to render, whether it was a banner or flash detail, whether it's HTML that says explore your ecosystem or succeed as a partner or what you want in the small fine print. We needed a mechanism to really display that and let us control the styling of that. Our data model really is two levels. We have a concept of a page, and we have a concept of a bucket. A page is basically the home page here. A bucket is maybe the banner, maybe it's the sidebar area, the latest news and upcoming events. Maybe it's the banner sidebar. So our 3 buttons here that you guys click on to register or go to the Dreamforce registration, that sort of thing. To show that to you real quickly, so I'm just going to log into our org. And we actually host our content management system in the same place that AppExchange is hosted. So I think, John, you also mentioned you have how many sites? About 10 sites. So you don't need to go out and get more and more orgs. Everything that you own probably today, you can already use to really expand your capabilities and your messaging and your channels out to your customer base. So if I take a look really at the website, if I go to www.salesforce.com, and I hope you all have been to this site already, /partners. This is our site. And what I'm going to show you real quickly is how easy it is to really control your functionality. So if I look at why Salesforce CRM, I have a banner here that says work with the leader. If I really want to just, let's say somebody comes back to me and says, can you change that out? Can you replace the banner that's on success stories, the most successful partners work with Salesforce.com, and throw that up on the Why Salesforce? Our data model is here. I have a page name. I have whether it's live or not. I have a version number. Version control was very big for us. And it's just simple Apex code where we just lock down whether it's in edit. If it's live, we lock it down. We have approvals in order to really manage the quality control. And all I'm going to do is take one of these bucket areas, these predefined bucket areas that we had, and I'm going to go up to Why Salesforce. I'll update my page. So right now you'll see it's live and locked. I'm creating a new version 6. And in the billboard, I'm just going to pop in a different banner, hit save. And what we actually built in here, Model Metrics was the company we used to help us build this out. They also built a preview feature. So as you're editing, you really want to use kind of a what you see is what you get type of feel. So this is not live. If you look at the URL, you'll see a standard org and ID URL. But here I've just changed my banner in a matter of seconds to promote that. And then I just have to get it approved, send a native workflow approval, and then we're done. My final lessons learned with all of this is really think about, on the tail end, who are your users going to be that are going to update your content? Are they marketing users? Are they operations people? Are they technical? Are they non-technical? Right now, all of our text really still depends on HTML coding. Pretty simple, but there are some managers who are people who are right-brained and left-brained. So think about who your audience is in terms of not only the end audience, your consumers, but also who's going to keep this thing up to date and keep it running, keep it really fresh in terms of content. I won't dive too much into this. You can get the presentation later, but we did run into a couple things when we were testing, when we were doing our validations. Sites sometimes has a tendency to mask native visual force errors, so you'll always want to do your debugging and checking within the app itself. And then also we ran into a couple weird slight caching scenarios where the page would come up and we had a drop-down list of values that around like state or zip code, and they would come out with Spanish or Russian values. We said, wait, we didn't internationalize the site. Everything should be in English. And it turned out that the browser setting of your personal browsers, if you happen to speak Spanish or you speak German or French, and you read all your websites in that language, was getting cached up to Akamai and being sent back down to other users. So big lesson for us was make sure you test your environments with caching turned on, which is something that we didn't do, but something that's really easy for you to put into your process.
Thank you, Ed. So when I listen to my colleagues, a couple of profiles coming out. So if you have a customer very tech-savvy, like Developer Force, they're happy. They built their own CMS system. They're not complaining. But if you start talking with the marketing department, they need to work with the tech-savvy group, either their IT department or another company, to build this stuff. So constantly I'm getting these requirements, and some of the roadmap items for these two product portals and sizes that to build this declarative UI for non-technical people so that they can work with the IT. IT can still control the branding, corporate branding, and what can be updated by business users, but not build this thing all over again for every implementation, right? And the other one I'm hearing is the content management system. I want to create, I want approval, I want translation, I want publishing, I want scheduled publishing. I don't have to wait and click the button at that time. All of these can be built today, but what you guys are asking from us is that, give that application to me. I don't have to build that. So at Cloud Expo, you can find a couple of partners challenge that, and they're providing AppExchange applications trying to solve this problem as well. But as a team, we're working on it as well. So since the previous session went over, I don't think we have a lot of time, but quickly, I hope this is informational for you and you decide to use sites. And here's a slide in what edition site is available with what kind of page views. And we can take a couple of questions because I guess the other session is going to start in 15 minutes. So if you guys have any questions to any of us, raise your hand and then I'll try to repeat the question. Yes, sir. I guess we need to run.
So we took a pretty simple approach. There is a setting, and we can send that to you if you give me your card. But there's just a simple language setting where you say force English. So until we haven't rolled out our localization yet. When we do that, then we'll start having to really look at a different solution.
Question? Question is, AppExchange uses attachments to upload the images by partners. How do you manipulate those images as a thumbnail or the big picture, right?
I mean, basically what we do with the attachments is for each partner, when they log in through the publishing console, they're now a customer portal user. And all we did was write some custom Apex code that would allow them to either delete an attachment or attach a new one. These are just simple files. They're, you know, PNGs or JPEGs or something like that. Yeah, the teeny tiny preview thing is actually some pretty fancy CSS that's doing that. It's actually the full-size image being shrunken down and manipulated.
Question? Yeah. So I'll ask, the question is, there's a package, site reporting package. When you download it, it gives you certain functionality, certain reports, and you want to enhance it. So what would you like to see in that report? Okay, so pretty much you want to see clickstream kind of functionality in this report. So currently, we do not have plans to enhance that reporting. That is a usage reporting mainly from billing and the governor limits point of view. What we're building is that adding functionality so you can integrate with the analytics, web analytics applications out there. For example, this last release, we introduced tracking code at the site level. If you want to integrate with Omniture or Google, you just need to populate that. And we provide an out-of-the-box component. You can add it to your template, right? Out-of-the-box template has it as well. So that dynamically finds out, okay, this site, this is the tracking code, and start sending the information to Google or Omniture. Question? The question is there any issue putting a tab and taking users to somewhere else? Do you guys see any issue with that? I don't. Yeah, so Force.com, some of the tabs are
all
Wiki,
three of us
some
do
of
it
them
in
are
various places.
Salesforce.
So.
Question? Question? Correct. Okay. So the question is, why we're using customer portal for authentication. So Force.com site is all about unauthenticated access, public access, right? So behind the scenes, your site has a user as a profile. So everybody accessing your site is the same exact person. It's an anonymous user from our point of view. That means you don't know who they are other than maybe get their IP address. That means there is only one public access control, what that site can do for the entire site, for everybody accessing that site. If you need to authenticate the user, that means your use case, you need to know who that person is. You might want to run reporting about it. You might want to capture or expose personalized information. The most secure way to do that is the portal technology, because then once you authenticate, a new user can have your own profile and can have your own security settings, and you can push personalized information based on that authenticated user. Any other authentication you might put on top of sites is not going to be secure. Behind the scenes, you're still using a public user. Question? So the question is search engine optimization. Can I use my own domain? So since all these implementations are Salesforce implementations, they're perfectly okay using Force.com domain name because we're the same company. But if you want to mask your Force.com domain name, it's very easy. It's available for you. You need to create a CNAME at your domain name provider, point your custom domain name to your Force.com domain name you registered with us, and then populate your custom URL field at the site level with your custom domain name. We preserve that. Correct. And you can control what pages can be crawled by the search engine by defining at the site level robot.txt. I guess just to give some chance for the other guys to get ready after us. So we'll be around here. We'll be happy to answer your questions. But thank you so much.
Thank you.